The room went completely still, and then erupted. It happened at the Hollywood Film Awards, a night that was supposed to be elegant, predictable, and full of polite speeches. But this time, no one could have predicted what Jamie Dornan was about to do. He had just finished accepting an award for outstanding achievement in acting, a recognition of a decade of complex, emotional roles that had defined his career. The audience was standing, clapping, smiling politely. The lights bathed him in gold, and Jamie, as usual, was calm, collected, until the host asked one simple question. "Jamie, who's been your biggest inspiration through all these years?" A routine question. Everyone expected the usual: my wife, my family, my fans. But instead, Jamie's jaw tightened, his eyes darted toward the audience, and for a split second, it looked like he forgot where he was. He exhaled slowly, gripping the microphone tighter. "My biggest inspiration?" he repeated softly, almost to himself. Then his gaze found someone in the crowd. The camera followed, zooming in to reveal Dakota Johnson, seated near the front, wearing a sleek black dress, her face calm but her eyes full of something unspoken. And that's when everything changed. Jamie smiled faintly, his voice trembling just enough to sound real. "There's one person," he began. "Someone who's challenged me, grounded me, and reminded me what honesty looks like, even when it hurts." The audience leaned forward. The host grinned, expecting another wholesome answer. But Jamie's voice grew stronger, his emotion rising with every word. "She knows who she is," he said, glancing down for a moment, then back up at Dakota. The camera caught it perfectly: the tension, the silence, the electricity in the air. And then, suddenly, he said it. Loud, clear, raw. "I love her." The words echoed through the hall like a thunderclap. For a moment, time froze. The audience gasped, then burst into screams, claps, shouts. Even the orchestra missed their cue. The director frantically gestured to cut the cameras, but it was too late. The broadcast was live. Millions were watching. Jamie stood frozen for half a heartbeat, realizing what he had just done. Then he smiled, not the rehearsed, polite smile of a celebrity, but something entirely different. Free, relieved. Dakota's reaction came a few seconds later, but it felt like eternity. Her eyes widened, her lips parted slightly. She covered her mouth with her hand, laughing in disbelief, then looked down, shaking her head as tears formed in her eyes. The crowd's roar only grew louder. Fans were on their feet, chanting his name. Even the host stood stunned, trying to turn chaos into control. Well, that's certainly one way to say thank you," he joked, but no one was listening. Jamie tried to recover, running a hand through his hair. "Sorry," he said into the mic, laughing nervously. "Didn't mean to make that sound like a declaration, but maybe it was." The crowd screamed again. Across the internet, the explosion was immediate. Within minutes, the clip went viral on X, formerly Twitter. Hashtags like #Jamie Dornan I love HER, #Jamie confesses, and #Jamie and Dakota trended worldwide. Fans flooded TikTok, looping the moment where he shouted it, the trembling voice, the way his eyes never left hers. On Instagram, fan pages compared his reaction to moments from 50 Shades Freed, pointing out how his expression was identical to the final wedding scene. "He looked at her the same way Christian looked at Anna," one fan wrote. "That wasn't acting, that was him." Back in the hall, Dakota composed herself, standing and clapping slowly. It wasn't for the award, it was for him. Jamie smiled down at her, his eyes soft, and mouthed two words the camera barely caught: "Thank you." Behind the scenes, the press went wild. Reporters scrambled to confirm what had just happened. Was this planned? Was it about Dakota? What will Amelia say? Entertainment Tonight ran an emergency headline within 30 minutes. Jamie Dornan shocks the world by screaming, "I love her," during live broadcast. But who is her? The mystery only made things worse. Fans dissected every frame, every breath, every syllable. Some insisted he was talking about his wife. Others swore it was Dakota. But those who had been watching closely didn't need to guess. They had seen the way his eyes lingered, the way her tears shimmered under the stage lights. One journalist tweeted, "I was there. He wasn't acting. That was a man who finally said something he's been holding back for years." Meanwhile, back at his table, Jamie sat down, head in his hands, grinning and groaning at the same time. His co-stars clapped him on the back, laughing. "Well," one of them said, "you just broke the internet." He looked up at Dakota again. Their eyes met for the briefest second, and in that instant, in the quiet between chaos, it didn't matter who was watching. For once, Jamie Dornan had said exactly what he felt. And the world would never forget it. By the next morning, the internet had lost its mind. Every news outlet, gossip blog, and entertainment feed across the globe had one headline. Jamie Dornan screams, "I love her, but who is he talking about?" The clip had been played, slowed down, remixed, and subtitled in 20 languages. Millions of fans replayed the exact second his eyes found Dakota Johnson in the crowd. The intensity in his voice. The way she covered her face in disbelief. It had become the most replayed 5 seconds of the year. But inside the whirlwind of speculation, Jamie Dornan remained silent. Reporters swarmed him as he left the hotel the next morning. "Jamie, was that about Dakota Johnson? Did you mean your wife? Was it a publicity stunt?" He said nothing. Sunglasses on, expression unreadable. He simply smiled and waved before stepping into the car. Meanwhile, Dakota Johnson became the second half of the story. She was spotted walking through LAX that afternoon, wearing a long coat and oversized sunglasses. But even behind the disguise, there was no hiding the smile tugging at her lips. When asked by paparazzi if she had seen Jamie's viral clip, she stopped briefly, looking straight at the camera. "I saw it," she said softly. Then, after a pause that made every microphone tremble, she added, "It was brave." That one word, brave, was enough to restart the storm. By evening, the internet had fractured into theories. Some insisted it was a spontaneous confession of love for Dakota. Others claimed it was a misinterpreted shout-out to his wife, Amelia Warner. And a few thought it was simply an actor's emotional slip, the result of nostalgia and champagne. But people who had worked with Jamie knew better. A former 50 Shades crew member told Variety, "You could always tell there was something deeper between them, something quiet but powerful. They respected each other too much to cross a line. But that doesn't mean the feeling wasn't there." Inside Hollywood, whispers spread like wildfire. PR teams scrambled to control the narrative. Jamie's manager reportedly urged him to clarify immediately before things spiral. But Jamie refused. "If people think it was about Dakota," he said simply, "then maybe they're right too." That night, a shaky iPhone video surfaced from the after-party of the award show, filmed by someone who had been standing near the backstage exit. In it, Jamie could be seen standing near a hallway, waiting. Moments later, Dakota appeared. She approached him quietly, both smiling awkwardly, aware of the cameras nearby. The audio was faint, but a few words were clear. "Dakota, you really had to say it, didn't you?" Jamie, laughing softly, "I didn't plan it." Dakota, "You never do." Jamie, "But I meant it." The clip ended there, blurry, grainy, but enough. Within hours, it hit 20 million views. Fans called it the real-life sequel to 50 Shades we never got. The next day, Jamie finally broke his silence. In a brief interview with GQ UK, he addressed the chaos head-on. "You know," he said with a quiet smile, "people are funny. They hear 3 words and build an entire movie around them. But maybe they're not wrong to. Because sometimes 3 words are enough." The interviewer pressed him gently. "And those 3 words, were they for Dakota?" Jamie paused, looking off to the side. "They were for someone who's meant a great deal to me," he said carefully. "Someone who's seen the best and worst of me, on screen and off. I think the world already knows who that is." The article went live within minutes, and the internet exploded again. This time, there was no debate. The confession was clear. For Dakota, the reaction was quieter but just as powerful. In an Instagram story that night, she posted a single black and white photo. The two of them laughing together during a behind-the-scenes moment from 50 Shades Freed. Her caption was simple. Some words don't need an explanation. It became the most shared post of the week. From then on, the story stopped being about scandal and started feeling like something else. A love story that had always existed in the shadows, unspoken but undeniable. Weeks later, at a private charity event in London, the two were seen together again. No stage, no microphones. Just quiet conversation and laughter in a dimly lit corner. When a journalist nearby asked if they'd reconciled after the viral confession, Dakota looked up, smiling. "There was never anything to fix," she said. "Some people just speak from the heart." Jamie, standing beside her, nodded. "And sometimes," he added softly, "the world finally listens." The reporter didn't ask another question. That night, another clip leaked. Not dramatic, not scandalous. Just Jamie and Dakota dancing together while a live band played a slow jazz tune. They weren't touching closely, but their movements were perfectly in sync, as if no time had passed at all. Someone captioned it, "When I love her isn't just a line, it's a truth that's always been there." By the next morning, fans were calling it the moment Hollywood finally got its love story. And maybe they were right. Because for once, it wasn't fiction. It wasn't a scene or a script. It was Jamie Dornan, finally saying out loud what the world had been guessing for nearly a decade.